The following is a fan-based discussion, and all materials being discussed are owned by Toei and Super Productions. I claim no ownership to the materials being discussed and is purely fan opinion. Hello everyone and welcome to the first video of the Toku FanimeX show. On this channel, I'll be mainly talking about and reviewing tokusatsu shows, such as Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, and Ultraman. But I'll also be talking about other non-toku animated shows or films, such as anime and cartoons. For the first video of this channel, and because I am a tokusatsu fanboy, why not start off this channel with presenting to you guys some of my favorite tokus, starting off with Super Sentai. Now, for those who don't know what Super Sentai is, it's basically a group of people who transform into superheroes using various transformation devices that are either wrist-worn or handheld. And they use their powers to fight against the villains or monsters of the week of their respective show. This is highlighted in the name, Super Sentai, super being super and Sentai translating to squadron or team, which will be present when you watch Super Sentai because some subtitles will translate Sentai to squadron. But before we go into the main top 10 list, let's start off with some honorable mentions. For those who have seen Toku, or are Toku fanboys like I am, you would know that some Toku shows are more serious or darker in its delivery, especially its tone, while some shows are mostly positive, but they also have serious moments. So, but what if we had a show that was basically mainly positive, majority of Sentai is mainly positive, which is even highlighted in the opening theme, and we feature a team of heroes who are not technically humans? That's right, the first honorable mention is Tensou Sentai Go Seiger. Go Seiger, I remember watching this show and I liked it the first time I watched it. Like, yeah, this is not the best Sentai show out there, especially when you count what came before this and what came after this. But Go Seiger was still a good show to watch. The reason it didn't make my main top 10 list is because the characters in this one are not the best, specifically the heroes. I like them all enough for their positive nature, but they're not the most developed and memorable in some cases, which is why this is only an honorable mention. But this is still a good show that's worth checking out. For those who have seen a lot of films and movies or even TV shows, what's one type of TV show that a lot of people tend to watch? Spy movies or special agent movies. So what if we incorporate that into Sentai? That's right. The second honorable mention is Tokume Sentai Go Busters. Go Busters, when I first went into this show, I didn't expect to like it, especially when compared to what came before it, because I watched it directly after. But this show managed to dash my expectations, because this show was a good show, at least in my opinion. Like, the characters were, like Go Seiger, they weren't the best, but I think they're better than the Go Seiger characters. But the plot, I like the plot enough in this show, but it's definitely not the best. This is a show where I like the villains more than the heroes, because I think Enter is a fantastic villain. I like him a lot. I like him more than the heroes. Like, the heroes are all fine, with the Six Rangers being the standouts of on the hero side, but I like the villains more. And not to mention, it presented one of the prettiest villainesses in Super Sentai with Escape. But yeah, Go Busters overall is not a bad show at all. I quite liked it, but there are just shows I like more. For those people out there who like animals, you will know that we humans are not the only inhabitants of this planet. In fact, there are many species of animals out there that we both know and that we both don't know. But we know that we humans, we're not alone on the planet, nor do we live alone. We share a connection with other species, whether it's biologically or some other connection. So what if we had a show that explored that connection between species of animal and humans, or the humans animals too? Number 3 is Toku Sentai Zooger. Zooger, I first watched this show, and I think when I first watched it, I think it was extremely simplistic in both its design, suit designs, and mecha designs. And there are some things about it that I think should have been done differently to make it just overall a better show. But I still enjoyed Zooger for what it presented. Like, I liked all the characters. I think they're all fine. They're not all the best developed characters. Like, in terms of development, there's really only really one of them or two of them that get the most development. The rest of them not so much, and you'll know who I'm talking about once I start reviewing the show. And for those who've seen Zooja, you probably know who I'm talking about. The mechas do not look great in terms of their design, and the villains were not the best either. But I like this show for the message that it was presenting. The fact that how no one in this world is alone. You're always connected to someone or something out there. And it helps to explore the fact that it doesn't have to be humans who can live on this planet, because 4 of the rangers of the team are not human. Only 2 of them are human in this show. But yeah, Zooja overall is still it's not a bad show at all. Like, if you want something, if you like animals, this is the show for you. But on to the main top 10 list. For those who have seen Super Sentai, or at least seen more than one, maybe a couple of Super Sentais, you'll know that you'll find that most of the members of the teams out there are adults. Like, yeah, may have individual members that are below the age of an adult, but what if we had an entire team that's not only all teenagers, but they're also they start off as high school students and who use technology to fight the villains. That's right, number 10 is Denji Sentai Mega Ranger. Mega Ranger is a great show. Like, yeah, it did have quite a bit of filler at the beginning, which is why it's this low on the list. But Mega Ranger, the characters were all great, with my favorite being Silver. I liked him the most, but every character in this show got good moments and had good development. The villains were not the best in the show, but they were fine. The plot once it started going was great as well. It had great mechas, great suits, one of the best suits in Sentai history. This Denji Sentai Mega Ranger was overall just a great show to watch. Number 9. Now, for how our world works, there's one end of the spectrum that's science. Because basically, science is what we use to explain basically everything that happens in our world. But what's on the other spectrum of this? Well, one answer will be magic. So let's have a magic themed Sentai where the members of this team are also family members. That's right. Number 9 is Maho Sentai Magi Ranger. Magi Ranger, when I first watched this, I didn't actually watch it like recently. In fact, I watched it like when I was still young. But like 10 plus years ago, when I first saw a few episodes of it, because I never watched the show completely back then. So when I started watching the show from start to finish, I had vague memories of it. Especially one memory of an episode I remember was the episode where Red and Blue got into a fight because Red broke Blue's mirror. But this show overall is just great. Every ranger served a purpose. The family dynamic of this team is amazing. Like, yeah, there may have been acting issues late in parts of it, but overall it was still a good show. The villains don't start off that great at the beginning, but the villains in later parts of the show were fun to watch. The show was amazing in the second half. It was still good in the first half, but the second half of it was amazing. Not all the characters were memorable, but they all served a purpose, which is something I liked a lot about Magi Ranger. Now, number 8. One important part of Chinese martial arts or Chinese mythology, physio, philosophy in general, is ki, but not just any ki in this case, geki. That's right, number 8 is Juken Sentai Geki Ranger. Now, Geki Ranger is a good show, I'll admit that. But the reason why it's this low on the list is because as much as I enjoyed this show, I did not like the Red Ranger at the beginning, which is part of the reason that I didn't expect to like this show as much as I do at the beginning, because the Red Ranger at the beginning was not great. In fact, he was sort of unbearable, and I'm sure a lot of you may find it that way. But he does get better. But the biggest problem with this show is that the heroes pale in comparison to the villains. Like, this show's a very villain-driven show. Like, Real Melee were huge parts of the show's plot and story. And the heroes, they really only, their development mainly comes from the connection with the villains. And that's referring to the characters who got good development, because not all of them did. In fact, like half of the team didn't really get much at all. It was really only 2 members of the team that got the most, and that was only really because of their connection to the villains that gave them as much development as they do. But I liked how it gradually built up to the end where every power they have, they had to train to get it, which is something I respect this show a lot about. The Geki Ranger is not a bad show at all, but it's just not one of my absolute favorites because the heroes just are not. They just pale in comparison to the villains. Number 7. Now, we humans, even when we fight, we tend to use skills. We use our brains to fight and think. But what if we had a Sentai team that's mainly fighting with instincts in a lot of cases? And it's the second dinosaur-themed Sentai. Although the dinosaurs in this one are sentient because they can talk. That's right, number 7 is Bakuri Sentai Arbor Ranger. Funny thing with Arbor Ranger, I have seen clips of this show, like basically 10 years prior to this year. I remember watching a clip of Aubrey Killer beating the hell out of Aubrey Yellow and Aubrey Blue. Like when I first started watching Aubrey Ranger, like from start to finish, I remember that. And basically I can't wait to get to the part where Aubrey Killer debuts because he has one of the most badass debuts in Sentai history. But and Aubrey Killer is easily my favorite character in this show. He makes like the start of the show is good, but when he shows up, the show just goes up another level. The other characters are great as well. Like the Red Ranger Ryoga, he's great, and Aubrey Black, who is the mentor of the team, because this is a season where the mentor is actually another ranger. He's great. A lot of plot ties into him. I love it how in this show the plot is not driven by red but by black, which is something I absolutely respect about this show. And oh my gosh, when Aubrey Killer died near the end, I almost cried. That scene was emotional. but but Opera Ranger is a great show. Like if you can make it to the debut of Aubrey Killer, there's a high chance you'll love this show. Number 6. Now, a lot of Sentai, because Sentai is a Japanese television show, it's a Japanese superhero show, you would expect it to have a lot of Japanese culture or Japanese traditions in there, and you're absolutely right, it does. But a lot of the Sentai shows, at least from what I remember, the most they show in terms of Japanese culture is really like in like the New Year episodes, or they show bits of it like throughout, but they don't present it as much as what I'm about to say. With number 6 being Samurai Sentai Shinkenger. Shinkenger was the first Sentai that I've seen from start to finish. In fact, it was the first Sentai that I've ever seen, like just in general. And Shinkenger is an amazing show. Like Shinkenger is extremely traditional, like extremely Japanese, as the theme of this show as this is a samurai theme show, which makes sense, and it was good, and it gave a legitimate reason why Red is as overpowered as he is, because you would find that a lot of recent Sentais, the Red is the most powerful, most important. In this one, it has a genuine reason because he's the head, but the dynamics between the characters are great. I love how each member each character was not wasted. I love the mentor in this team with Hikoma. Everyone got something. Even the sixth ranger in this one he was a great character. The suits were amazing, the mechas were amazing for the most part. Not so much the later combination ones, but the origamis were good. I just love this show. What is there to really say about the show? And the theme song is a banger. I love that. I love the theme song of this show. One of my favorite theme songs of all time. Right. Now, just like with Go Busters, because I'm sure a lot of you would have seen like spy movies, but what's another type of drama or police show that we more or less see as like a lot of people like to see? Police drama or detective drama. So let's have a detective show or in this case, a special police show with Toku Sentai Decker Ranger. Decker Ranger, I didn't expect expect to like it as much when I first watched it because I've seen a lot of police drama for this, and they're more case by case. Like, yet there is a serial murderer that they are trying to catch that is the final big bad of the show, but it's mostly a case by case basis. So I didn't really expect to like it like Deku Ranger as much before I watched it, because all the Sentais I've watched before then don't really work in the same way. But man, it exceeded my expectations. This show is amazing. Like, I love the team in this show. Like, the Deku Rangers are probably one of my favorite just overall teams in Sentai history because every one of them serve a purpose. Red is the hothead. Blue is the traditional one. Green's the smart one. Yellow's an Esper. So she's my favorite character in the show. I'm sure you all know who I'm talking about. Pink is also important in her own way, and she's definitely useful in her own way, especially at the end of the show. From what I remember, the mentor of this show is a badass. I love him. Like, there are no bad characters in this show, and that's rare. Even for me as a Toku fanboy, it's very rare I say this. Like, every character in the show is good. And even though it didn't have like a main villain faction because it's mainly just criminals, the monsters in the show are basically criminals that the normal police cannot handle. But it worked in this case, which is why I didn't mind it that much. But Deku Ranger is still a great show. Check it out. Check it out. You won't regret it. Speaking of police drama and a police Sentai, Deku Ranger is not actually the first police Sentai out there. In fact, it's the second one. Now, this one, even though the Rangers themselves are basically cops, but this show doesn't really incorporate the police aspect of it that well as Deku Ranger because it's mainly about changing your destiny. Because the majority of this team is not from the past or the present, but in fact from the future. That's right. Number 4 is Mirai Sentai Time Ranger. Time Ranger was great because it presented a message that I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. It's about like changing your destiny and changing your tomorrow. That's especially true with when Red first came in, and that's when he first officially becomes a member of the team. His whole thing was great. Like, all the characters got something, and I love Red's like more or less rivalry with Time Flyer, the Sixth Ranger of this team. Like, every character was not wasted at all. Like, every character served a purpose. I'm talking specifically about the heroes in this one. The villains are mostly good, except for one who I didn't really care that much about, but I'll talk more about it once I review Time Ranger. But Time Ranger, I love the message, I love the suits, the mechas, the fight scenes were all good. Great, in fact. Time Ranger was just a great show in general. Like, it presented a lot of important messages that we can relate to as well in real life. Now, because Super Sentai has been running as long as it has, it will have anniversary seasons. And what's the best of the anniversary seasons, in my opinion, as of right now? It features a group of aliens, because they're not from Earth. But not just any aliens, space pirates. But not just any space pirates are going to use the power of all the previous Super Sentais before them. That's right, number 3 is Kaizoku Sentai Gokaiger. Gokaiger, I'll say this first. I didn't like the villains that much in this show, especially the one at the beginning. But I didn't mind it as much because Gokaiger is a lot of this show is made up of tribute episodes to previous Super Sentai. Some I liked and some I didn't like, but nevertheless, it does a great job as like with the tribute episodes. All the characters were amazing. Like even although one of them doesn't get as much as the other 5, because there's 6 Gokaigers, like by like around the middle-ish point, there are 6 Gokaigers at that point. I think one of them don't get as much as the other 5, but they're still good. Their gradual change in their motivation was really good to watch, from the initial like fighting for selfish reasons, because they're fighting for treasure, they want to find treasure, to their shift at the near the end where they actually become a full-on Sentai and they're actually doing it for the reasons to protect people, to protect the world, basically. And that end where they leave Earth and Marvelous, who is the Red Ranger in this show, gives back all the previous Sentai members their powers. I just love that. Also, the I love the opening and the ending in the show. I don't say that much because usually I don't care much about the ending, but this ending is one of the best ones out there. But yeah, if you want a like introduction to Super Sentai, Gokaiger is one of the best seasons to do that. Now, with the Sentai teams I've mentioned, they all shine in their own ways, figuratively shining. But what if we had a Sentai season that shines, takes the idea of shining, but in a more literal sense? That's right, number 2 is Machine Sentai Kira Major. Now, Kira Major, when I originally watched Kira Major, by chronological order, I was actually supposed to watch Ryu Soldier before this, but Kira Major's whole like gemstone motif and the idea of and the fact that it shines as much as it does, it just grabbed me more than the Dinosaur Night theme of Ryu Soldier, because I watched 2 of the 3 Dinosaur Sentai before this with Arm Ranger and Kyoryuger, so I was not really in the mood to watch another dinosaur theme Sentai. And plus, Kira Major's like motif just grabbed me more than Ryu Soldiers did. And I'm glad I did, because Kira Major is incredible. The fight scenes are incredible. Especially the one I remember specifically was the warehouse fight when they're trying to fight over that tablet. That was amazingly shot. Like pretty much all the fight scenes were great. I enjoy watching the mech fights in this one, especially with the various camera angles they use, especially with how it's shot, the story, and how it incorporates into the mech fights. I love that. All the characters were likable. Like this entire cast is incredible. Even the Six Rangers, even though I don't like him as much as the main 5, but he's still a great character. The villains were amazing. The opening, I think it's catchy. It's not my favorite opening, but it's a very catchy one. At least to me, it is. And like Gokaiger, the ending this one is great. Like yeah, it's a dancing ending thing, but it's amazing. Like it truly shines. What else can I say about it? It just truly shines. It shines in its own way, and I love about it. Now, on to my favorite Sentai of all time. It probably won't change for a long time, even after I catch up with Sentai. What's one thing that's in common with all the Sentai teams I've mentioned so far, or the Sentai shows I've mentioned so far? They feature only one team of 5, that eventually expands to 6, although there are a few exceptions to this. But what if we had a show that featured 2 teams? Now, I'm not just a Toku fan, but I'm also an anime fan in some cases. And one of my favorite animes of all time is Detective Conan. And what's one of the most popular characters, and honestly one of the best characters in that show as well? Kaito Kid. And what is his profession? A phantom thief. But there's always 2 sides to everything, just as there's light and darkness with pretty much every Sentai show out there. There's a profession that's basically on the other side of, basically opposes a phantom thief all the time. And what is that? Well, cops. So let's have a thief versus cop, or versus police kind of Sentai. That's right, my number one favorite is Kaito Sentai Lupin Ranger versus Keisatsu Sentai Pato Ranger, or Lupat for short. Now, originally when I was watching this show, the reason why I even watched the show is the motif and theme of the show, like what it was going for with the whole robbers versus cop. That just grabbed me, and I watched it. And man, did I have a blast with Lupat. Like, the story itself is very character driven, which is honestly one of the reasons why Lupat is this high in my heart. The characters are great, not just the characters themselves, but their dynamics with both each other and the characters from their opposing side. The dynamics between the Lupin Rangers and the Pato Rangers, awesome, just awesome. It's not a perfect Sentai. I'll say this, like it's my favorite, but I know it's definitely not a perfect Sentai. In fact, some areas I could say aren't done the best. The villains, for the most part, they're not the best. I like a few of them, but on the most part, they were quite meh. And the mechas leave a lot to be desired as well. Like, I like them enough, but they certainly aren't the best looking mecha. They are not my favorite mechas all of Super Sentai. No way, they're not. But Lupa is just, I enjoy just watching something just different, because this show is extremely different to the previous Sentai I've seen. Because, like, you would have seen by now, like, Sentai is mostly a two-way fight, because on one side we have the heroes, which is the Sentai team, and then there's the villains. It's basically just the heroes versus the villains. But in this show, majority of fight scenes, or for a lot of it, it's a three-way fight between the Lupin Rangers, the Pato Rangers, and the Ganglers, which are the villains for this show. That uniqueness just, it was great. The fight scenes were well shot. The story, at the story didn't really make much sense in some cases, especially concerning with the power-ups, like with the auxiliary mechas and the power-ups they give. They mostly made sense, but there was one bit that I feel like shouldn't be done that way. I'll talk about more once I review Lupat. But Lupat is just like the suits. I also love the suits in this one. Like, Lupat is just, it has a special place in my heart. This show was amazing. I still think it is. Now, for my first ever review on this channel, because like I said, this is a review channel, we have one Sentai team that not too long ago, as of the recording of this video, got its 20th anniversary movie. So why not? So for my first Super Sentai review, why not start with that Sentai, which is Tokuso Sentai Deca Ranger. I am super excited to review this show. It's one of the best Sentais out there. I think it is. Like, yeah, it may not be one of my favorites, but it's definitely one of the better Sentais out there. So I'm super excited to review this. Now that sums up my top toku for Super Sentai. Stay tuned for my first ever episode of Toku Sentai Deca Ranger. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment in the comment section what your top toku for Super Sentai is. That's it for today. Bye guys.